All right. Well, I am so excited to have a phenomenal guest here. We've got, I don't know how to describe you, Robin, like a micro celebrity. Like you've got this stature amongst LinkedIn. You're just like the known account for anything that's resumes, HR, venting, whatever it is. You're there and you've got the hot topic. So thank you so much for being with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. Thrilled to be with you.
First and foremost, you're an entrepreneur. You've got a phenomenal service-based business that you guys run. You've got this influence of voice among social media, as well as just kind of being an expert in your space. But you've also got some really interesting things on how we can be able to talk through the humanizing side of hiring and the HR side of things. But I'm going to start with a little bit of a moment here because you just posted recently on LinkedIn how much you hate an ATS, and I own an ATS. And so we're going to get to the bottom of it. You can take one side, I'll take the other. But your point was well taken. Your post was around how back in the day before ATS, there was no such thing as the bottlenecks. And it was all about you showed up, you looked someone in the eyes, you shook their hand, you know who they were, they knew who you were, and you could make a hiring decision pretty quickly off of it. And how ATSs maybe have helped break that humanizing side of it. Did I get that correct?
Yeah, you got that correct.
In a day and an age when technology and HR people are asked to do more with less, how can they get back to that side of things? How can they say, yeah, maybe we use an ATS, maybe we're using it for organizational purposes, but how do we bring back that human side into this hiring equation?
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem really with ATS for the management of candidate data, for the vetting of the resumes to a certain extent. But it all ends up boiling down to, are we going to humanize hiring or are we going to automate hiring? We seem to be stuck somewhere in the middle. I have no issue at all with sending someone an automated response that is not getting called in for an interview, that didn't make it past the vetting questions, whose experience doesn't align with what I'm looking for. My problem is more with the idea that people are spending a lot of time filling out applications that have been sent to them by an interested party, and then maybe taking your personality test and then going in for an interview, going for another one, sometimes 5, sometimes 6, sometimes 7, sometimes do this presentation, sometimes come and meet the board. And then, weeks and months go by and you never respond back to that person that, hey, you didn't get the job. We didn't like your tie. We hired somebody else. It's become very casual with the candidate's feelings and their time. And I think that's the worst part of hiring right now. People aren't upset because they didn't get the job. People are upset because they spent a lot of time applying and interviewing for jobs and they don't hear back from anyone. That's the biggest problem.
Yeah, it comes down to respect, doesn't it? It's kind of this
it all
mutual
comes down to respect.
It's like, hey, I want to be
And
appreciated.
intuition. And the ability to make a decision. I don't know how old you are. I'm 56. I'm going to be 57. Back in the day, you interviewed someone once, maybe 2 times, and that person stayed with you for 10 or 15 years. Now it seems like interview processes are very much, we're trying to find the right person and take this test and what's your personality and, what color is your parachute kind of stuff. 40% of hires are considered bad hires. Technology hasn't improved the quality of hires.
Yeah, it's so interesting you say that, Robin. Could we also say technology is creating a convenient way for candidates to leave quicker as well? There's just more information
absolutely.
thrown
I
at
think
them.
yes, I think that's the case.
I think there's probably, for a long time, there's also the fear of the unknown, right? You stuck with your employer because it's what you knew, it's what you trusted, it's what you liked, but also just the unknown of availability out there prevented you from looking. And that dynamics had a weird shakeup in how this relationship between employer and employee is created and is.
I agree with you. I mean, what you've just said is so honest and so true, that the idea of conducting a job search in this day and age is so daunting to a lot of people because it's not just a onesie-twosie interview. You got the offer, you didn't. There seems to be a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of effort that goes into it. And it's a crapshoot as to whether or not you're even going to get a response. So I do think people are sort of sucking it up and staying, or maybe they're staying in jobs that they, should have left 2 years ago. It impacts your compensation. It impacts your career growth. It impacts the ability to move into a management role if you're someone who's in a non-management role. So if you're afraid of, and a lot of people are afraid of jumping into a job search because it feels like it takes a lot of time and effort. And, sometimes at the end of the day, our battery just isn't, as charged up as we want it to be. So, imagine working a long day and maybe a commute, maybe you're back into an office where, you were working from home. And then the idea of, coming home and filling out applications to find a new job, you're like, oh, I'm just going to stay where I am. That's the big issue, because the evolution of a career happens when you move, not necessarily move companies, but move roles. And I don't see a lot of movement right now.
Yeah. I think upskilling is very important.
Agreed.
And it's just daunting. It's overwhelming to get that at your current employer amongst all your core responsibilities. To then learn and skill up to something else is very challenging. And thank you for helping me kind of address that. I love talking through that. You are such an expert. I'm going to go back to this little bit of an intro here on resume writing. That is your foundation, your business. Can you just walk us through that just a little bit about just that business journey and how you created that aha moment and got to where you are today?
Sure, absolutely. So this is a well-known story. I was a sort of junior executive for Pepsi Cola. I was traveling all over God's creation. I had a kindergartner at home. I was, I think, 28 or 29. And after a very long day and a very snowy trip home over a mountain, I walked in the door and I said to my husband, I'm quitting my job. And my husband right now he's a corporate controller and he has been for a long time. But at the time he was finishing his CPA. He was working in Pittsburgh and our daughter was in kindergarten. He said, okay. He said that he's a very logical guy. And so I was the breadwinner, really. I was making the most money. He was just sort of getting some footing in his career. And he said to me, he goes, I'll make you a deal. If you can find something to make enough money to pay for groceries every week, I can float us for a year. And I said, deal. So I quit my corporate job. I was making six figures. That was a long time ago. And I became a waitress. So that's how Storyline happened. I started working from home. Like, well, what can I do? I just want to be here with this kid. And then a few years later, the second kid came along. And I love the idea of making my own schedule and sort of being my own boss and not having to travel. And I was afraid to drive in the snow. And I was always stuck on a mountain someplace. I live in Western Pennsylvania. There was a lot of travel in my jobs. And I said, you know what? I'm going to consult. I didn't know what the hell I was going to consult for, but I'm going to consult. And I ended up picking up a few clients. I picked up a communications company. I did some work for the Girl Scouts. A lot of my background was in marketing. And then somebody asked me to write a HR manual. And I didn't know the first thing about HR manuals. So I actually went back to my alma mater. I took some classes. And I thought, I love this. I want to do this. So I ended up continuing to pursue more credentialing. And then someone asked me to write them a resume. I had done a lot of hiring in my career. And I said, you know what? I know what should go into a resume. And that's how it started. I wrote a resume for a friend of ours who was an engineer. He started sending it out, got a job almost immediately, started sending me his engineering friends. And then they sent me friends of friends. And then finally, a few months in, my husband said, are you going to charge for this? You know, you're spending a lot of nights and a lot of weekends sitting at our kitchen table, interviewing people about their work, about their jobs. I'm endlessly curious. I love people's stories. And I thought that a resume should really feel like a good story, right? Something that could captivate you. And that's how Storyline was born. And, it started off small. I was a one-woman show. I answered the phone. I interviewed clients. I wrote resumes. And then slowly but surely hired my first writer, then an admin, then a salesperson. And then by the time, we hit our heyday, we were, a $10 million business, 70 employees, all working from home. I'm a big fan of families. I want women to feel empowered. We pay extremely well. I want them to be able to put their kids to bed at night. And that's where the passion comes from.
I love it. It's so contagious, right? I know you attracted other A players so quickly because they saw your passion for it and your commitment, and they were willing to match that and deliver it.
There is something very addictive about the result, right? So, I don't really work the business day to day anymore. I've got a great team of people. I'm here doing a lot of these events, which I love. I provide a lot of free advice to people on LinkedIn. I get hundreds of messages a day, which I also love doing. Tomorrow, I'm launching something new. It's called the Aunties of LinkedIn. So stay tuned for that. This is going to be a really fun adventure for me and other women who also want to give back. And I just love the idea of being able to, tell a great story, to help people out when they reach out to a stranger on LinkedIn. I think it's so odd or so scarce that even as strangers that, we're willing to take a minute to give a piece of advice or answer a note. So it's really been an adventure and a lot of fun, but I'm exactly now where I need to be.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I'm going to lean into that expertise, and I want to talk to you because I love your experience from your HR functions at some of these great companies that you've worked with, but you also got the job seeker representation side because your experience of meeting and working with so many job seekers that have great stories. So you have a very unique perspective to have seen and been on both sides of the table. I think what I want to get into is, which do you hate more, the quarterback situation of the Pittsburgh Steelers or AI written resumes?
AI written resumes. The quarterback situation has proven to be pretty interesting around town. But AI written resumes are going to be the bane of our existence. And I know that a lot of people felt like when AI first rolled out that it was going to be very easy to kind of take their resume, customize it to a job posting. But it's something that's already creating fatigue in the hiring space. I talk to hiring managers every single day. I have a lot of recruiters in my network, and they are trashing the resumes and the cover letters. The cover letters are the most embarrassing. They're getting, the cover letter over and over and over 20, 30, 50 times for every position that they're hiring for, the same cover letter. So it's a little bit ironic to me that hiring managers and hiring in and of itself relies so heavily on technology. But from that vetting process, from that recruiting side, they don't want you to rely on technology. They want you to be your genuine self. And I'm happy about that, even though I do find it a little bit ironic.
How do you get HR people to see that, the authenticity versus the automation, the AI? How do we get them to not only recognize it, but maybe it's not perfect in a day and an age where AI is trying to perfect the resume? How do we still give enough value to the non-perfect resume, but might be the right fit?
The first thing I tell people is when you are applying for work or you decide that you're going to conduct a job search, read your own resume with an objective eye. Are you insanely excited to meet that person? Does that person really capture your attention, and not in a, resume kind of way? Is the story on that resume enough for you to want to pick up the phone or send an email? And if you're looking at your own resume, and we're all attached to our own stories, right? If you're looking at it and it does not thrill you, it doesn't excite you, it doesn't make you want to say, hey, I want to meet that person, then how do you expect a perfect stranger that has zero skin in the game and does not give a hoot about you, how do you expect them to overlook all of those things and find some sort of diamond in the rough, right? So that's the first thing. It's so important that when you're describing yourself, a resume isn't an endless document, right? It's 2 pages. I call it resume real estate. So every bit of space on that resume is important. Make sure you are filling it with things that make other people excited about who you are. And it's not your good communication skills, right? It's all the results, the KPIs, the great stories that you tell. We have done so many, 25 going 26 years now of writing resumes. One of my favorite stories is the resume we did for a marketing executive. She ended up taking like 2 years off when she had a baby. And so we did a little blurb on her resume, and she was a content person, and she was funny and she was smart. When she worked with our interviewers and our writers, we told this funny little story about what she's been doing for the past 2 years, which is changing poopy diapers and, going on endless walks and trying to find moms in the neighborhood that, she shared the same sort of belief system with. And then we put a little picture of the baby. Well, let me tell you, she started sending that resume out. her phone rang nonstop. You know why? It was different. It was fun. It was genuine. It was true. It was humorous. There's no humor in resumes. We try to be, a little bit more personalized and genuine in our approach. That's all the difference.
Well, I think HR people appreciate that as much or more than everyone else, right? The human side of it just is so loud and screams authentic. And that's what a lot of companies want, is more authenticity, not shortcut people that are just looking for shortcuts to get the quick interview, right?
I mean, if someone is funny on their resume and it goes somewhere, that stuff goes viral. There's a reason for that. We're all sort of desperate for human connection in a professional way. And if you say something that makes me laugh, definitely, I'm interested in you. So it's just hiring is just like life, right? We want people that are interesting, that feel like they fit with us, that are maybe funny, or they appear to be kind or gracious or whatever. All of those things that we want in the humans around us, that's what we want around us at work as well.
As much as we're complaining about these AI written resumes, we're using AI to reach out to candidates. Have you seen the trend now? I'm sure people listening to this know this, but there's this massive trend now to send a text message to a candidate with a link, and then there's an AI agent asking questions that's recording their answers, analyzing their answers, and then sending an AI written overview of that candidate. And before we know it, the candidate's going to have their own AI agent representing them, taking the interview, answering the questions the perfect way possible. So at what point do we make this thing a human experience? That's the HR side of human, right? Like, how do we get HR people to recognize the value of time spent being human, measuring the human, versus technology to help us accomplish everything we need to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a balance, right? So I have no problem with technology. We love technology here. I think that we're very, next gen in terms of our own tech and the tools that we use as a business. But when you're hiring humans, that is a decision that is best made by humans, right? Just like anything else, there's always going to be tools to make your job easier. I'm a really big fan of, and I don't think companies employ it enough, I'm really a huge fan of the vetting approach. So when you are creating a job requisition or a job description and you're hiring for a role, get with your key people. The person that candidate's going to be reporting to, somebody from HR, maybe somebody from, that department, and sit in a room and say, or have an email or, meet on a Zoom and for 10 minutes and say, what are the 6 most important things that you think this person needs to have? What are the qualities that this person needs? And then come to some sort of consensus. And so even before so if I'm a candidate and I see that job posting and I go, I need to answer these 6 questions, and the answer to those 6 questions needs to be yes, before I even make it to the application piece. I think that job seekers are very discouraged by the amount of time they spend filling out applications for positions that they're never considered for. So I think that you need to determine the qualities, and it can't be 28 things, right? Because when you start getting into 10 qualities or 15 requirements or 20 different skills, that's impossible. Nobody's going to have that. But when you come to some sort of consensus or what the core things are that you need this person to have, and then you take them through the application process, I think it cleans things up. I think it saves a lot of time, and it allows the people that are in charge of those requisitions now the actual opportunity to have a conversation. And I think that we're doing ourselves and our hiring a real disservice by making hiring all about technology. We're eliminating the idea that people have the opportunity to follow their gut instinct when they make a hire. I'm old enough to remember that I hired people because, they met all the qualifications, they dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's, but I felt like they'd be a great fit, right? They had the right demeanor, they had the right personality, they had the right sense of humor, they had the right sort of calming or excitable disposition. We're taking that away from hiring right now. We're letting technology make decisions about people that should really be made by people. So I think that's the part that scares me the most. And in a world that is so dedicated to diversity and equity and inclusion, when we let technology create these systems for hiring and then rely on their recommendations for hiring, we're finding ourselves in a situation where we're hiring a lot of people that look and sound and feel like us. It's going to have to go through a reboot. We're going to have to find a better way.
I think that brings up an interesting point, is that are we hiring people that just answer questions really greatly, or are we getting candidates that have the right skill sets to perform the duties and responsibilities that role really needs? But let me ask it a different way. I think that you've got this disconnect right now in the marketplace. This is from the lens of Ryan. We see tens of thousands of job postings going through our system. We get to hear the complaints. We get to hear the celebrations. What's interesting is HR folks tend to get less candidate volume. They tend to be louder and complain more. We've recently worked with someone I was just thinking of this week that on average would get 120 to 150 resumes, and they're calling and complaining because they only got 70 to 80. And the question was, what's wrong with your system? Is something broken? But the reality is they added more content to their job description. And my unsympathetic counter argument was, I think you just made your life easier because you only have half the resumes to screen through, but you're allowing people to be more self-selective on what role they're going to apply to. So what do we want? Do we want more candidate volume?
No. I don't think we want more. I think that we're on candidate overload. Like you just said, 80 candidates. That's a perfect amount, right? There are jobs out there currently on LinkedIn that have 2,000-3,000 applicants. There's no way in hell anybody in a hiring situation is going to take the time or has the time to review all of, okay? So yeah, we want to streamline. We hired someone not long ago for an interviewing role at our company. And it is a great job, right? We're looking for seasoned, former HR executives, seasoned leaders in operations, manufacturing, technology, whatever. We tend to hire, folks that are a little bit more experienced around people and are not shy. You've got to really be able to draw information out of people over the phone. So our interviewers are the ones that interview our clients for the content that we're going to use to create their resumes. And so I put an ad out and I put my vetting questions, and, I happened to glance through the list of, and thank goodness LinkedIn does this, and I do love this feature. These are people that were not recommended for the role. There were hundreds of people that didn't meet one single criteria. I had someone who was living in the Middle East and whose current job was a helicopter mechanic apply for, like, it's silly, right? I have nothing against helicopter mechanics. We need them everywhere, right? But it's silly to me that we've created a system where we're inviting everyone to apply. It's so easy apply, click apply, upload your resume, yada, yada, yada. But we're not doing anything to make it better for ourselves on the back end. So if I had to look through 800 resumes to hire an interviewer, I probably would have never hired the friggin' interviewer, right? I would have just said, you know what, let's forget it. Those tools are great, right? We want to weed people out that really aren't going to be a fit. But that allows me, because I'm not weeding or I'm not reviewing 700 or 800 resumes, that allows me the time to really have conversations. And I can tell in the first 10 or 15 minutes. Most experienced hiring people can tell in the initial 10 or 15 minutes whether or not you want to bring this person in for an in-person interview, or this is the person for you. They have to have the time. So I don't want us to ever get to a place where we use so much technology that we've lost those instincts, because I think those are the instincts that are critical.
I totally agree with you. You mentioned something earlier in the question here. We were talking about kind of setting up the right expectations and going back and asking kind of what are those important things for the job. We think of that as your kind of your scorecard. What is your job role or your job scorecard? What are a couple of things that you would recommend a small business or a solo practitioner HR individual? What are the 2 or 3 things that you should look for on every job posting or every recruiting experience to look for? What are those key takeaways?
So I mean, if I'm a candidate and I'm applying for a position, I want there to be a clear, concise, and limited bullets of requirements, right? You cannot be 28,000 things in one person, right? So I want like the top 10 requirements for that job, right? That's the first thing. The second thing I want to see is, where is this position? Is it remote? Is it in-house? Do you have to go to an office? Is it a hybrid? That's the second thing. The third most important thing is the salary range. It has to be a realistic salary range that is aligned to the requirements for that job. As a candidate, if I see a salary range that's too low or too high, if it's too high, I'm thinking, well, they're not revealing everything I'm going to be expected to do. If it's too low, you're thinking, well, who in the hell do these people think they are? I'm not going to do all this work for that amount of money.
Right.
So I think that if we give candidates the information up front that they really want, that'll reduce the number of people that are applying for the job.
Think about how great that is as a recruiter. You'd be like, yeah, I do want to cut my applicant pool by 80% because the 20% that are still there, well, we'll throw half of those away because they probably will never read any job description. They're just going to apply blindly. But they know when you go into that first interview exactly what's expected. And there's this mutual understanding of kind of where our starting conversation is. So I really like that.
Ryan, that I got 1,000 applicants for this position is the modern day equivalent of I haven't had a vacation in 3 years. Back in the day, that was sort of a badge of honor, right? You would just work through, you work 6 days a week. You never took a vacation, never took a day off. You never took a sick day, blah, blah, blah. And that somehow made you better than everyone else. And I think that, we got 1,000 applicants or 2,000 applicants or 8,000 applicants for this job is this sort of self-congratulatory, kudos to me, we're so popular, we're the greatest company to work for, that we got this many. It's like the modern day equivalent of that. And I think it's silly because it just mucks up the process.
You are so right. Where's the trophy room for who got the most applicants to a specific job? Let's get that out of here.
I got a note from our customer on LinkedIn. He got a rejection from a company that he applied for. And the rejection was like, we got an extraordinary amount of applicants for this role. And I just did an eye roll and I thought, Christ, I would never want to work for that company because that is like their badge of honor. They're so desirable that, and this client was phenomenal that, we are everybody's just, they're just dying to work here. It's like that kind of silliness. So it's definitely a different vibe in this day and age. And there is something to be said about that sort of badge of honor mindset, and we need to stop that. You are not doing your job appropriately. If you're in hiring and you put out a JD and you get 3,000 applicants, you've done something wrong. This is not the time you should be patting yourself on the back.
You have had a tremendous growth yourself, for your company, for yourself with LinkedIn. And I know you get asked all the time, how'd you do it? How do you get 1 million+ followers on the platform? And you and I have talked about it a little bit, but would you mind sharing a couple of nuggets with folks on what does it really take to really grow a social media presence?
Yeah, it really just takes persistence, right? I post 2-3 times a day. I'll tell you when the sort of tide changed for me. So I've been in business about maybe 5 or 6 years. And I used to do little promotions. 10% off your resume package and do, whatever. And I can't even remember what the post was, but basically it was a rant. It was a rant about something that had happened to a customer of ours, something that happened in the interview process. And basically I just said on this LinkedIn post that I did on a Friday afternoon, this is bullshit. If you're going to bring people in for an interview, treat them nicely. If you don't want to hire them, that's fine. Just let them know. But basically don't be an asshole. That's what the post was. When I woke up the next morning, so I'm an early bird. I'm up usually around 4 a.m. I get my coffee. I come into my office. I go through my emails. And then I'm usually done, with that part, that part of the business, say by 10 o'clock. And then, the rest of the staff is here. I walked in on a Saturday morning. That Saturday morning, I did that post. I don't even know what I did. Probably went out someplace, went to bed, got up the next morning. I had something like 22,000 connection requests on LinkedIn, and thousands upon thousands of messages in my email. Actually, when I opened it up, 4:30 in the morning with my cup of coffee in hand, I was like, holy shit, somebody hacked my system. Somebody,
right.
No. That post went bonkers because it was a rant. It was my genuine voice. It was something that we're all thinking, but nobody is saying. And that weekend, I realized when we were booking calls for people who were interested in resume services, by that Monday, The 2 salespeople that we had on staff were fully booked for 1 month for people that wanted to use us for resume services. And I thought, I cracked the code. That's what it is. I'm fully myself. Everything that you see on LinkedIn is me. I don't have people that write my content. I am genuine. I am sometimes crass. I say what is on my mind. I'm a huge fan and big defender of people that are looking for a job. I want to be nice to everyone. I am truly who I am on LinkedIn, who I am in life. And I think that's the key. It's just the posting and it's the engaging. I meet people or people reach out to me and I meet people in real life and they feel like they know me. And someone will send me a message and say, I feel like I know you. And I say, you do know me. Because if you read my posts every day, you know exactly who I am. Because who I am in life is exactly who I am on LinkedIn. So that's the secret.
I love that. I love the authenticity angle of it, because I think in this world of alter egos and people are trying to come up with, like, there's this LinkedIn version of me and then there's this Facebook version of me and then I've got a TikTok version. Like, just be you. And it's amazing how contagious that is for people to follow and engage and feel comfortable commenting or being part of the story. And ultimately that creates a catalyst for more engagement and more viewership, is when you do get engagement, right?
Yeah.
Engagement creates engagement.
Yes. That's exactly right. My advice to anybody who wants to get a following on LinkedIn is to be your genuine self. Don't be argumentative. I find that positive posts are more beneficial for people. That people are looking for positivity in their life. So in my everyday life, no matter where I am, my brain is always clicking. If something really funny happens or something positive happens or I see something lovely that happens, you'll hear about it on LinkedIn the next day. I think people want that and need that in their lives. Don't get on LinkedIn and argue politics. I mean, you're going to get clicks and you're going to get likes, but that doesn't really build a business and it doesn't build a reputation. So, just like your mother would say, be nice to everybody, or, be kind when you can. And that's my philosophy.
I love it. What do you think, Robyn? Are we in a job seeker market, an employer market, or just a really nice equilibrium? What do you think?
Yeah, there's they said employment, the rate is fairly low. I think it's 4.2, or it's been hanging at the 4.1, 4.2. I feel like it's higher than that. I felt for a long time that it's been higher than that. I think we're starting to level out. For a long time, where we're seeing people go months and months and months, even without interviews. I do think that hiring has picked up, and it has been picking up pretty steadily since the beginning of this year. And finally now, really in about the past month or two, we're starting to see salaries leveling out as well. People are not constantly getting lowballed when they're getting offers, which was happening for about 18 months. And that's always really daunting and very disappointing, because I did a LinkedIn post a couple of weeks ago about, corporate profits. I get it. Hey, it's capitalism, right? Corporate profits. It used to be enough that you made millions of dollars. Then you had to make billions of dollars. And then who was it? Nvidia, a $4 trillion market cap. Now companies are going to try to, we want to be trillions of dollars. I get it. But where's all that money going? It used to be that company made money. That meant great salaries, great benefits. People were loyal. You had a nice office. People had good packages for vacation days. But now it's this like money grab all the time, right? Yeah. You see some of the biggest companies making the most money, hosting the most layoffs. That to me is such a sellout on the company part, because who needs billions or trillions of dollars? Why not create jobs? Why not have jobs or opportunities? I mean, if you really want to be a company that makes a difference, it all starts with people. It's never about the product. It always starts with the people, and then it's about the product that you're selling or making or whatever. But you need people. Companies don't run without people.
That is such a great point. I think even with this high conversation around AI, it's a tool, it's a utility, and it's I know there's a lot of fear about it replacing jobs, and I think the advice that I've been giving more and more job seekers that come to me with some level of fear of, is my job going to be replaced by a machine? The reality is you just got to keep creating value. Companies will pay for value, and if you can continue to demonstrate more and more value, you will always have a job and you'll always be sought after, and you'll be paid in a fair accordance to the value you're delivering. But in a day and age where folks are being complacent or entitled and saying, I just deserve this because of this and because I'm here, that's when things get scary. And that's when employers start to say, your value is about as equal as just a robot I could train up to do your function. But your point is well taken. There's a lot of profit out there. There's a lot of companies making tremendous amount of money. And we'd hope that they pay their people fair. They pay them well. And I know that, the CEO of a company would probably argue that they're in business to return value back to shareholder equity, right? But I think that expectation of what is the right amount to return to shareholder equity has gotten completely overlooked to
Completely skewed.
Exactly right. It used to be a 10% profit margin was extremely healthy and a great return back to shareholders with a really strong dividend. And now that's not enough. Now we're screaming, some of these companies are looking for 45% bottom line profit share for distribution. And to me, that's unethical at that point. We need to return back to... It's
completely unethical. I agree.
Yeah.
The thing about customer service, or the thing about, how it is that people feel about your product or your brand, I get it. AI is going to replace a lot of customer service jobs. But I mean, how many times have you called a company with a problem and you were thrilled to get an automated system to assist you, right? Yeah. Nobody is. While companies are cutting all of these dollars using these automated customer service tools, I get it. It looks really great for the shareholders, the stakeholders, when we go into the board meeting saying, hey, we were able to save $2 million in employee costs. But at what cost is that coming to the business? There's a company out there called Chewy. I don't know if you've ever heard of them.
Yeah, the dog supply store.
So these are the people that when your dog passes away, they send flowers to your house in a handwritten note. When I think of customer service, I think of companies like Chewy that have people at the front lines. When you call in, a human picks up the phone. Like, how great is that, right? I've been a Comcast customer for 30 some years. My internet went down a couple of weeks ago. I literally got lost in a bot loop hell. Now, I'm lucky enough that I have a commercial account. So I interviewed my home, and my business account went down. So I interviewed my rep, and they're like, let me get a technician over there. But as a consumer, I was like, you know what? I'm calling Verizon. Like, I have zero loyalty to these people. No one can pick up a phone for me when I'm desperate. I have meetings. I need to get this up and running. I'm pressing 0. I'm pressing 1. I'm following the prompts. I'm doing whatever. I've been a customer for a long time. That would make me leave. I literally Googled Verizon Fios and, my hometown. I'm like, can I get it here? And then the guy responded back and said, let me get a tech to you. But are you willing to do this on a grand scale to save a few $1 million? Let somebody pick up the phone.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think there's a book that I read by Tony Hsieh back in the day called Delivering Happiness. And I loved his breakthrough with Zappos and their commitment back to personalizing, buying shoes, and their commitment to, there's so many stories in their book about, talking to someone and they're buying shoes for a funeral or for some situation, and they all of a sudden had flowers delivered to them because they sent them flowers to say, we heard, our hearts went out to you because of this conversation we had with you when you were looking for this situation. So I think there's a way to really humanize it. It creates a loyalty. In my opinion, it has a great return on shareholder value when people love doing business with other people.
Yes.
But I don't make those decisions. I sit where I sit. But Robynn, listen, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I've been incredibly thrilled to have you in this conversation and talk through it. You're such an expert. For those that are listening or watching, jump on LinkedIn. You go by Robynn, but it's Roberta Storey.
Roberta is my legal name because you have to be verified on LinkedIn. But I go by Robynn. You can search me there. You can
find her on LinkedIn. She's a tremendous follow. Again, her authenticity and her voice is so encouraging, and watch her formula and follow it and shape your own story, and you'll find a lot of success and meaningful connections through those social channels. So, Robynn, thank you so much for your time.
You are so kind. It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Okay, take care. Bye bye.
See you, Ryan.